I'm here at the 8th Annual Russian Bankers Conference, and as my cameraman says, in the belly of the beast. And we're on a break right now. Behind me is a press conference that they're holding during the break. And I'll be going on right after this press conference. But what's really interesting is some of these bankers acknowledge that this system where they get to create currency out of thin air is basically a corrupt system, a scam. But you'd have to be crazy not to participate in it. Many of these people are not going to like what I have to say, but I think most of them are going to listen. Their personal finances are at stake, and that's more important to them than what happens to their bank. Instability, crisis. I'm hearing these words repeated a lot at this meeting that you're having here. The things that you've been seeing, all of the details on the banking system, the change in payments system, the insurance, these are details, and they're good things, and they're things that apply to your business. But in the big picture of things, they're just short-term noise. The crisis that you have just been through is nothing but a speed bump on the way to the main event. The storm that is coming is going to be bigger than anything that you have ever seen. There's a dollar crisis coming. There's a big deflation coming soon. The money supply of the United States has begun to contract for the first time since the Great Depression. This deflation will cause central banks around the world to try to inflate to help stimulate the economies. This causes a giant wealth transfer. One thing that I have found is that all markets around the world now trade in the same direction. All economies go in the same direction, and they all follow the United States. Wherever the United States goes, so goes the rest of the world. If you can see the future, if you can see what's going to happen in the future, you can either make great gains or great losses. Because all economies are linked now, because they all follow the direction of the United States, this will be the greatest wealth transfer in the history of mankind. I believe that the people that get prepared are going to see tremendous wealth come toward them, while the people that do not are going to get wiped out. In your handouts, in your bags, you got a DVD. Inside the DVD, there's a couple of banknotes. There's a $1 Zimbabwe note. There's a $100 trillion Zimbabwe note that was printed less than a year later. This one bought something when it was printed. This one bought nothing in less than a year. $100 trillion. Everybody here has one of these. This is what happens when a government is run off of pure deficit spending. During a deflation, tax revenues go down. I'm going to show you information that oil prices are on their way down. They're going down a lot. That means your government revenues are going to go way down. This crisis will affect the entire world. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through this very quickly. I'm also going to be telling you exactly what I think. And some of you are going to like me and some of you are going to hate me. But I'm not going to be polite. I'm just going to tell you what I need to tell you because I believe that this is the most important information that you're going to see in your lifetime. Basically, I think that everything that you're hearing here, everything that you've listened to, is a bunch of bullshit. Basel II, Basel III, payment systems, I don't care. Your personal lives are at stake here. Anybody that gets prepared is going to become super wealthy. The ones that don't get prepared in this room are going to become government employees when the government nationalizes the bank system. You're going to be working for the government. You know, the USA just had a crisis. Russia just had a crisis. The world had a crisis because the banking system had a crisis. What you're going to see, I'm going to go do this presentation. I'm going to be blasting through it because I don't have much time. And I'm going to show you that this crisis isn't over. There's a second leg to this crisis. It's coming soon. Like I said, I believe that this is the most important thing that you're going to see at this event, one of the most important things you're going to learn in your lives. A decade ago, I started studying the economy very intensely. I wrote the best-selling book on precious metals investing, but it's really a book on monetary history, global economics, and I predicted this crisis long ago. I was giving lectures on the consequences of the real estate bubble back in 2004 and 2005. Ben Bernanke, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, said there wasn't a real estate bubble in 2007 when it was about to burst. This is an international run on precious metals right now. It's the greatest, one of the greatest bull markets in history that has gotten started. My book is now published in 6 languages. It'll be 7 in another month or so. The last go-around, it was only 10% of the world's population that could participate. This time it's everybody. Russia's monetary base, since your crisis of '98, there are 26 times more rubles, paper rubles. This is base money. Base money is the paper rubles, paper dollars. There's 26 times more in existence than in 1998. Did your population grow 26 times? I don't think so. Your population, I'm told, is shrinking. This is where inflation comes from. You guys are suffering big inflation. That's where it comes from. Prices. In the United States, we lie. The government lies about inflation statistics. So does your government. It's no surprise. They're saying that prices are only up 3 times since 2001. Your money supply, base money, is up 10 times in that same period of time. Banks create money by monetizing the private debts of businesses and individuals. That's the Federal Reserve. I know that you guys don't think that you're creating money when you create loans, but when those loans get deposited into another bank that you've created, you have created money. And then they get redeposited. Every time you write a loan, that loan is going to somebody that's going to buy something. When that seller deposits that currency in his account, there's now 2 bank balances that show money in them, not just one. And this is where most of the money supply of a country that has an advanced monetary system comes from. So I'm going to whip through this very quickly. It doesn't really matter if you understand it or not, but this is how currency is created. And what I've found is that almost nobody really knows how currency is created. In the United States, the Treasury issues a bond which is nothing but an IOU, and the primary dealers, the biggest banks, come and show up at the Treasury auctions and buy those bonds. A few of those banks are now dead. Then the Federal Reserve, through something called open market operations, will show up and either drain liquidity from the system or add liquidity to the system, and they will buy some of those bonds. When they do, they write a check from a checkbook that has nothing in it, and currency springs into existence, base money, paper dollars. Then the next month, those banks go back and show up at a Treasury auction and buy more bonds. So what ends up happening is you have this buildup of bonds at the Treasury and base money, bonds at the Federal Reserve and base money at the Treasury, and then the government will do some deficit spending, and the government employees, the soldiers, the government contractors will deposit that in the commercial banks, your banks. Now, the miracle of fractional reserve lending comes into play. You create a loan by taking a portion of that depositor's currency. I'm going to use a 10% reserve ratio as an example here because it's easy math. So somebody deposits 100 rubles. You borrow 90 of that out of their account and you loan it to somebody. And that person buys something, a house or a car or whatever. The seller then deposits that into his bank account. And so now there are 190 rubles in existence. Then that bank takes 90% of that deposit and loans them out. And now there are 271 rubles in existence. And this process repeats and repeats, and under a 10% reserve ratio, it's possible. You wouldn't do this because you wouldn't push your balance sheets right to the edge, because you could get shut down. But if you go right out to the reserve ratio, and the reserve ratio is 10%, $100 rubles can create 1,000 by you guys. So that's it. That's the currency supply. It's a couple of bucks that was whipped up in this scam here, I call it, where they swap IOUs. A bond is an IOU. Loan me $1 trillion, I promise to pay you back $2 trillion in 30 years. A check is an IOU. Here's my check. You can go to the bank and pick up cash. So they swap IOUs, currency springs into existence. You guys get to magnify it, and you guys get to get rich off of this system, so it's really a good system for you. This system does transfer wealth from the population to the government and the banking system continually. So it's the whole currency system is a couple of bucks whipped up by that system, and then a bunch of numbers that you guys type into your computers when you create loans. It's just credits and debits on the books. In the United States, we pay a lot of income tax. I know that you guys don't here. Most of your government income comes from oil. I'm going to show you that oil is going to crash, prices are going to go down, you're going to have a really severe crisis here. The crisis is going to start in the United States though. But anyway, in the United States, we have to work for some of that currency supply so that we can save it up so that we can pay tax. We pay that to the tax collector called the Internal Revenue Service. The Internal Revenue Service then turns it over to the Treasury so the Treasury can pay the principal plus the interest on that bond that was purchased with a check from nothing. So all of this, the value of the currency, comes from all the labor and ideas and talent of the people right here. This is what actually gives it value. And because there was interest due on that bond, and there is interest due on every single one of these loans, there is always more debt than there is currency to pay the debt. In the United States, we have about $14 trillion, but we have $60 trillion of debt to pay with that 14. It's impossible. This system cannot go on forever. It's eventually finite. Eventually, interest will start outstripping the amount that you're borrowing into existence every month, and the thing just goes into a hyperinflation eventually. So, because there's interest due on this bond, and it's paid out of taxes, every paper dollar, every paper ruble in existence is a promise to tax us until the day we die, at least in the United States. You don't pay a lot of income tax here, but in the United States, every dollar in existence is a promise to tax us until the day we die, because it's borrowed into existence and it's all promised back. The entire currency supply is owed back plus interest. So, the US monetary base, it took 200 years to go from $0 to $825 billion in existence. Then along came the financial crisis of 2008, and Ben Bernanke wrote a bunch of checks to bail out the banks, and when he did, base money was created. We created more currency in just 18 months than the last 200 years. Do you think that's a good thing? I don't. But that's the base money. That's the portion of the currency supply that the government creates and the central bank. That only accounted for 7% of the currency supply before the crisis. Now it accounts for about 15%. This is the portion of the currency supply that you guys create, at least in the United States, that the banks create. It's called, the rest of M3 is base money plus this. Now something is happening here that is ringing alarm bells, and it's saying that there's a crisis coming. If we deduct base money from the M3, what you see is that there's a collapse of the currency supply. This has not happened since the Great Depression.